All right, so lucky enough to be chatting to Mike, Richard, and John Wright from Talk About It, Mate. Today we're going to chat a little bit about men's mental health and a little bit about the film Anonymous as well. How you doing, guys? All right?
Good, yeah.
Cool.
Very good, yeah.
Thanks for agreeing to talk to me. So Talk About It, Mate is first of all, how long you guys been going for?
As an organisation, about 3 years ago, I started it, but then it's the last year we've kind of started to take it more seriously, and like myself and John are hoping to make that a big part of our, jobs going forward.
Cool. And what was the inspiration then?
Long story, but I had a mental breakdown when I just before I turned 30, so about 4.5 years ago, and I was living in London at the time, and I'm a teacher, and then I kind of started to overcome a lot of past things, and as I started to build myself back together, I moved back to Manchester, where I'm from, and then set up a peer support group because I thought what's not out there, like I was looking for something that wasn't available, and so I decided to create it myself, and then I did a blog, and then we're here.
Yeah. And what about yourself, John? When did you come on board?
My story isn't dissimilar to Mike's. It's just that mine sort of dovetails into the last 6 months, I suppose. So
right.
I don't know if I would describe what I had as a breakdown because it's very difficult. Everyone's experiences are very different, and one thing feels like one thing to one person and another to another. But went through a similar experience of not really knowing of any service out there that would be able to help me in the way that I would want. And then just serendipitously, my best friend knew Mike and was attending a different session with him. Myself and Mike became introduced. I came along to the very first peer support group sort of meet to discuss what was going to happen. And fast forward a few months later, I have left my previous job, or on the verge of leaving. And it just so happened that Mike thought that I'd be a good partner to come and be involved. So I think that was about a month ago we sort of started to formalize that relationship, and we're in the midst of that now.
That's amazing, guys. Even in my business, in the film industry, the way that the film industry portray men, for the most part, tends to be as either a complete success or a complete failure, and it's very, very rare that you get someone in the middle ground, which accounts for 95% of the world's population. It's someone who's who's in that middle area, and I think what we need is to be able to recognize that 95% of people are shades of grey.
I can empathise massively with that sense of, I don't know, almost existentialism when you reach a certain point, and of a certain generation as well, where you're like, I thought I was going to have done this by now and I've not, and what does that mean? Definitely.
Yeah. It's that need for role models, I find, like achievable, authentic role models. And John must be sick of me saying this now, but I use the word authentic about 300 times a day, like real, genuine people. And like it or lump it, myself and John are good role models for the mental health community, because these guys come to us and we're very open about our mistakes and our successes. And it's not unachievable to, like, we both met playing fat man's football, which is called Man v Fat, losing weight. And for a lot of the guys who start out a lot bigger, to get a six pack, that's not achievable for a guy who's like 20 odd stone. Yeah. Whereas to get to look like where I am now, I think I was nearly 5 stone, 4 stone. Like, that's achievable. I don't know. It's like about setting achievable and having good role models. Yeah.
Yeah, that's it, exactly. Creating a realistic role model, and from my perspective, characters that are relatable. When I came to write the script for Anonymous, was to set that, because my experience with addiction is I would never have called myself an addict. I stopped drinking in 2013. A couple of friends of mine, particularly coming into lockdown, one of them was a recovering cocaine addict, and he had a relapse like first week because he's trapped inside and his routine is taken away. And most importantly, from you guys' perspective, his community is taken away. And what dawned on me was what Hollywood tends to do is it tends to glamorize the demonic side of addiction. And it's the same with other mental health subject matters as well. It tends to glamorize the substance or the destruction of a human being because that's sexy and that puts bums on seats. There's an extent to which that's irresponsible, because the film industry plays such a big part in creating role models. What I wanted to do with Anonymous was create a guy who seems to be completely average at the beginning of the film, and the people he meets in the room are the people that he sees are at different stages of their recovery, and from different walks of life. And I think this is the other thing that's important to touch on. Mental health, whether it's addiction or anything else, it's not elitist, it's not racist, it's not sexist. People from different walks of life, different levels of financial success, and it's similar for you guys. When you commune, it's guys from all different walks of society.
On paper, there was absolutely no reason for me, from an outward perspective, to go through what I was going through. But it can happen to, even if you think you're safe. Yeah, I remember thinking when I was 25, 26, I don't understand how, I didn't discount the notion of depression, but I was like, I'll never be depressed. Like, there's nothing, I was too secure in my own feelings that I thought that would never happen. And yet it crept up on me and happened to me. And I can actually empathize with the notion of what you said there about addiction. I think there's something in that, like, something I'm really interested in, that grey area between not being an addict, but also understand, or not necessarily wanting to call yourself an addict, but understanding a dependency or an unhealthy relationship with certain things, whether that be substances or otherwise. So
yeah, I almost think that, like, I tried to, maybe I wasn't an addict, but like maybe I was addicted to like negative thoughts, or I was in this negative cycle, and I became addicted to self-improvement. And I think that once you've kind of outed yourself as having a mental health issue, as in like you've stood out from your peers. So I've got quite a successful group of mates, both very good jobs, and for a lot of different factors, maybe they haven't had the problems I've had. And but then in my own mind, I thought I was a little bit different, and then you become like this black sheep, and that probably through all my 20s, that really like dogged me. But then when I started to engage with support services, in particular peer support, so when I went into a room in London, it was 5 years ago, and told people about my depression, anxiety, and there were 10 other guys there who had the same thing, I was no longer a black sheep, was I? I was completely in that room where everything I said was valued, where I'd said the same things in the pub, and I've always been open. It would have dominated the conversation and taken away from that. Whereas because they're not your closest friend and your family, they can look at it from a different angle and be more sensitive and be more compassionate, and then you can start doing that for yourself.
And particularly, I guess, for guys, because there's that barrier that goes up, isn't it? Because women talk to each other about problems and about what they're going through much more easily than guys who just want to talk about football and pretty much it, to be honest with you, most of the time. So
we've created a separate WhatsApp group for that kind of conversation.
There you go.
But yeah, I think it's interesting now when I hear that sort of statement, because the community that I have, whether that's through role modeling that I've done, or whether it's like-minded people, who knows now, because actually I look around and I'd say a lot of the men in my life that I'm close to are very open now. And there is that potential there, if you do allow men the space and the permission, if you give them a role model to say, well, if he's doing it, I can do it, then they do have the propensity to follow. Like it's sort of nurturing social issue rather than a sort of gender-based issue completely. So I think that's one of the main outcomes, whether we would describe it as the aim of male peer sport, is to encourage a community of genuine openness. I mean, that's one of Mike's other favorite phrases is openness along with authenticity. The fact is, when men don't talk about their issues, they're not really being their true selves. They're putting this version of themselves out to the world, like, all right, yeah, I'm all right, yeah, I'm okay. That's not really congruent to how they actually feel, and that ability to be your actual self is the whole trick of the game, is what I'm starting to understand. If you can just be yourself and not worry about it as far as that's possible, then that's where happiness lies. Yeah,
growth. Interesting. A really good case example is when lockdown started, we got online. My dad lives in the Isle of Man, so I can't see him, and he lost his wife last year. And me and my dad have always been quite close, but never with that real emotional depth. And he started coming along to the groups, and John will attest to this. Took him about 3 or 4 weeks. Didn't know the format. He's in his 70s, and but he's really come on leaps and bounds, and almost like seeing the way the other guys are, and then he's come on with rapid growth. So it happens when it happens. There are guys who've been coming for 10, 11 weeks, and you can tell they're still not there yet.
Yeah.
They keep coming back.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think as well, it's once you've made that one tough decision, like I looked a lot into the 12-step program as part of my research for addiction recovery for the film. And obviously the 12 steps is hugely important, and you look through it and you kind of go, yeah, that makes sense, that makes sense, that makes sense. But the thing that people forget about is actually the step that happens before the first step, which is actually going to the meeting in the first place.
Yeah.
And even a step before that, to admit to yourself that you need to go to a meeting.
Yeah.
And it's those two decisions. And I think once you've made that first decision, I have an issue, that second decision, I'm going to go see somebody about it, then every other decision after that becomes a little easier.
Courage is what Mike said, which is one of Talk About It Mate's 3 big C's: courage, compassion, connection. We both realise the importance of, because I'm going through my own counselling at the moment, my own learning about all the different, because I'm interested in this as a sort of leader and role model as much as a participant in counselling. I'm learning about all the theories around it, and almost all of them have this central truth of responsibility, which is, and it's the core of CBT, for example, which is, no one can do it for you. You've got to do it for yourself. I for so long hid away from the fact that I needed help, but as soon as I did something about it, like we were talking about, Talk About It Mate, the facilitator training that happened about 6 months ago it was, I woke up in the morning, I'd said to my best friend that I was going to go and meet Mike properly and get introduced about and learn about Talk About It Mate and get involved, but I was really hungover and it was raining and I felt anxious and I didn't want to get out of bed, but something in me just went, no, you are going to go and this is really important. And I mean, look where we are now.
What's lockdown been like for you guys? Presented challenges, or has it been positive, or what?
I'd say positive, yeah. Overcoming the challenge, we just started our physical face-to-face meetings, which took that was probably 6 months of groundwork for me to get to that stage as a single person running a voluntary organisation, and then to adjust to having to do it online with dodgy technology. But then here we are, 14 weeks? We've probably done about 50, 60 odd sessions now. Wednesday, Sunday, and then we do quizzes. So if anything, the trajectory of the brand of Talk About It Mate has gone really up. And then since John's come on board, let's say about 6 weeks ago, that it's gone even quicker. But the podcast is going well. We've got loads of plans for that. So
being online has actually helped us to grow our organisation, bring people in that I don't think would have generally attended.
And now they might be more likely to attend a face-to-face when there is that sort of release to be able to do so. But what about the other side to it, though? What about the fact that you think there's going to be more people coming out of this? This is certainly the case with addiction, and I'm absolutely with depression as well. Coming out of lockdown, recognizing those afflictions in themselves, and your workload is gonna increase in terms of the number of people reaching out to you.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I think the effects of this lockdown is completely unknowable at the moment, but it makes logical sense that a lot of people will have been suffering. And also the rate of self-referral for mental health services has gone down, which is really interesting, because what does that suggest? We don't really know yet. You can postulate, you can come up with ideas, but actually what does it mean? We can only know once we're out of this. I think another thing that's really just struck me now is the people that we know that are involved in Talk About It Mate community and regularly attend, I wouldn't perceive any of their mental health to have declined, which is brilliant. It shows that actually that support network has kept them steady, at least. I'm not saying they've all had transformations and they're all incredibly balanced, happy people now, I mean, myself included, but it's definitely kept us all on a level. So.
All right, guys, I would love to chat to you all day. I genuinely could, but I'm sure you've got things to do and I've got things to do. So I'll thank you for your time. And do you want to just do a little shout out for where people can find you?
We're called Talk About It Mate. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at that handle, I believe. You can find myself and Mike on there as well. If you just look for our names, Mike, Richard, and John Wright, if you search through that way. We're also going to have a more active YouTube very soon, and we're on Spotify. Our podcast is on there as well, Talk About It Mate. So yeah, just Google Talk About It Mate and you can find us in a variety of places. I don't know if you want to add anything to that, Mike, but we can talk about the things that we do, very briefly. So
yeah.
So we do 2 men's peer support group sessions every week, one on a Wednesday, one on a Sunday, 6:30 till 7:30.
Is that a Zoom link?
Yeah, there's a Zoom, but we do that actually, Mike, I've forgotten the one that you use, that you started, which is Meetup. So if anyone's got the Meetup group, like that, we're on there, and the links are usually posted onto there. But we also have a WhatsApp group. Once you've joined the community, you can join the WhatsApp group, and links get shared through there as well. We want to make it as easy as possible for you to get there, but obviously we can't share it publicly without some sort of gateway, or otherwise we could get Zoom bombed. So we've got the men's peer support 6:30, 7:30 Wednesday and Sunday, and then women's peer support Thursday 6:30 to 7:30. We've got a book club now on a Monday. We're about to finish our first book, which was brilliant. We've got a weekend waffle social event on a Saturday morning.
Wow.
Usually 11:30 till 12:30, which is like quizzes and just silly games and never have I ever. But that's like across the whole community. That's including people that never ever come to the peer support group, just like friends and parents and anyone really. And that's a really good fun thing to do. And then we're also looking to start a podcast club that's going to be run by one of our community. And we've also we do a lot, Mike. Walk About It, Mate, which is
I saw that. That's great.
Which is so it's walk and talk, socially distanced at the moment. I think Chorlton Water Park this Sunday, that's our first one, and we're always looking to do more. And one of the most exciting things that's coming up next is our next season of our podcast, which will be a different format to the previous version. There'll be a trailer coming out at one point, and something else that probably relates to what you do, which is Talk About It, Mate's going to have a separate content media arm, which will do things like vlogs and video interviews, etc., etc. Because I have a background in acting, producing, writing as well. So I want to, I was an actor what feels like a lifetime ago, and then did theatre production and directing and writing, etc. So I want to bring those skills and mix them in with what's already there. So a lot really. You can find it all.
But all that stuff is on the social media. So if they go on the social media, they can find all that stuff and the variety of stuff that you've got. And even if they just want to come to the Walkabout It, or they just want to come to the quiz or whatever it happens to be, and just kind of feel their way in.
Absolutely. Community connection. There you go.
Yeah. All right, guys. Thank you for your time. Check it out, guys. Talk About It, Mate.